In this next exercise, we are going to explore 3D. So we're going to use an add-on to After Effects called Cinema 4D Lite. And we're going to create a text 3D object. But you'll learn the basics of 3D animation through this exercise. There's a lot to cover. Let's take a look. Now, Cinema 4D Lite is a version that's attached to After Effects of a 3D software called Cinema 4D. So we're going to design some text within that software and link it up with our After Effects composition. Let me show you how. So the first step is actually to go up to File, New, and Maxon Cinema 4D file. I'm going to name this 3D text and press Save. So now it's going to launch Cinema 4D for us. And you may get this dialog here asking you to sign in or create an account. You can use any email address, your CUNY email address to make a free account, but it is free, the connection to Cinema 4D Lite. Whatever I do in Cinema 4D is going to be reflected in After Effects. Now, if I go back to After Effects, you can see I've got this 3D text link here. The first thing I want to do is check that my preferences and settings are right. So go up to the gear icon on the clapboard and make sure that it's 1280 by 720. So that's what you want to check so that your perspective is right. There's more to look at here, obviously. I'm not going to go through it all. I'm just going to give you a general sense of what the process is. And what the important buttons are here, because you could go through every button and that would be too long of a demonstration. So what I'm going to do is just give you a basic run through here. So this is your viewer screen here. So in the middle is what's going to appear on screen. And up top here we have a toolbar, and we also have another toolbar on the side here. We have an animation strip down below. And then on the very right-hand side, we have our layer and project information. So let's begin just by adding some text, okay? So I'm going to do that by going up to this little spline menu and hitting text. Now I get this general text menu, and you can see it's popped up over here. So I'm going to take that and just put out my name in the text box. So now I've got this, I've got my name. Now obviously I can't see all of it, right? It's not on the screen. So now's a good time to talk about navigation, right? So if you hold down 1 and you go right to left, up, down, you can get your kind of directional navigation, right? If you hold down 2, you can zoom in and out by going up and down on your scroll pad, right? And then 3 gives you a rotation view, right? So I'm going to just adjust this so that all of it's in frame here. Okay. So kind of like looking above it like that. And how Cinema 4D works is that you get a spline or like an object, and then you have to add, right, your dimensions to it. You know, in this case, we'll add an extrude, and then you add a material to it so that it actually can reflect light and be a real object, right? So you're actually modeling. So this first step applies to these text blocks we're going to do, but it also applies to objects. So as you progress through your design career, you may be modeling different objects, right? So this is kind of how it works: is you get this kind of frame to put things around. You get an extrude, or you get like you apply mass to it, and then you apply a material so it actually reflects light and looks like something. So same for text, same for objects. Now, so I'm going to do that now. So I'm going to apply my extrude. So that's in this little menu here with the extrude as the first menu item. And I'm going to make sure that I've got a hierarchy here. You can see nothing happen. So hierarchies matter. So I'm going to take the text. I'm just going to hold it so that I get a little down arrow. Now I get actually 3D, right? Which is pretty cool. So if I make sure that my extrude, right, is selected, not the text, but the extrude, because that's the thing I want to extend. If I go to my z-axis here in the coordinates and went to say 25, I get this. I get a really nice 3D element here, right? So that's what I'm going to do. So I got my name, I've got an extrude on there. And now I need to add some material, like we said, right? So let's go down here to the bottom and create a new default material. So the default is this white matte material. You can add some color detail if you want, but if you double click on it, right, you can get all of these here, right? So now it's got color selected and reflectance. So it's got some, reflectance, but you can actually take this and make it different colors if you'd like. So you can make it kind of change these slider bars, add some color. I'm a blue person. I do like my blue, so it's kind of more purple actually then. Hold on. There we go. More deep blue. So there is my material, so nothing has happened yet to it because I haven't applied it to the object. Now I can just drag it over onto there and suddenly I get that, right? Now it ends up here in the menu, so if you don't like what you see, you can just press delete, and by selecting it and press delete. And then we'll double click on it and we can actually make changes here, maybe make it a little lighter. That seems a little. Let's do something a little less intense so that that's better. So now I'll click and drag it onto there. That's better. Okay. So now I've got this 3D text here. I'm going to add some animation. So for that, we are going to add a camera. So right now we've got a default view of this, but let's add this little camera. So go up to the camera icon, and it automatically, once you click it, it adds it onto the top here. So I've created my camera, and you can always click on the view off and on, right? So my starting position, and you can see where the camera is right up here, it says camera 1, and you can rename these if you'd like to. But I'm going to click on this camera here, and I'm going to make sure that I see the view here, and I'm going to make a keyframe. So that means I'm going to move this playhead all the way to 0, and by default you get a 90 frame or 3 second out of 30 frames a second composition, a 3-second animation. So let's make a little loop here, okay? So I'm going to do that by clicking on my first keyframe. I'm going to click on, with it at 0, I'm going to click on this keyframe icon. And then I'm going to go right to the end at 90 and click on the keyframe. So it's going to end up and be in the same position it was in both. Very important to click on the keyframe icon here. Now I'm going to hit the midpoint. So I'm going to go to 45, click on 45, and you can see if you're on the right one, it says right here at 45 frames. I'm going to click on and move. So I'm going to take my camera and move it. So I'm going to take my rotation, so hold down 3, and I'm going to bring it into the center and just over to the right a little bit. Oh, and over. And I'm also going to press the keyframe. So now make sure you press the keyframe every time, and I'm going to press play, this play button here, to play it. So now it does this little swinging action, right? Pretty cool. So now we actually created a little, something that could loop pretty easily, right? The last thing I'm going to do here is go up to where it has this little gear icon on the clapper board, and I'm going to click on that. I'm going to make sure that I'm exporting this at the right settings, right? So right now I have it set at 1280 by 720, which is the aspect ratio of what our composition for After Effects will be. But just make sure this is all right. And 30 frames a second sounds really good. But this will actually preview, you'll get a view of it, right? And so you can see this darkened area here is what I don't see on camera. So if I go back to my default view, say, and I zoom all the way out, you can see I got my camera view here, and that'll give you a sense of what you're actually looking at. All right? But this frame here is limited by where it cuts off, right? You can set that as square, whatever you'd like, right? But make sure that's set up for 1280 by 720. I'm going to press Command S for save, or you can go to File, Save Project. And I'm going to go back into After Effects. So back in After Effects, I'm going to make a new composition, 3D text. Going to make it 1280 by 720. Sounds pretty good. I'll make this 15 seconds, 30 frames a second, square pixels, all good. And I'm going to drop this CD4 link into my composition. So now you get this. You get the wireframe floor, you get the whole view. Now you can see that actually what I've done is I'm still on the default view, so I'm not going to see my camera, which is unfortunate. So let's take this and click on the camera. Make sure we're down here. Press save again. And let's go back to After Effects. Let's see what happens. Ah, see how it changes automatically? So you've got this linked file, which is really cool, right? Now to see the final setting and not just the draft setting with the floor included, let's go over here and go into current. Now it gives you what you'll actually see. And you know, the black is simply just the filler, right? You can put whatever background you want in here. By clicking on your checkerboard pattern here, you can see that it's just blank. But when you export video, it'll just be, by default, black. So you can put a different background in it if you want. I'll leave that for now. What I am going to do, you'll notice here, so I'm going to go to the end here and preview this by pressing spacebar. The preview is super slow. Like, I have a fairly fast computer, but darn, this is really, really slow, right? And since it's a loop, what I can do is actually create an easier way to view this in After Effects, right? So I'm going to export this. Because if you had multiple files like this, it would just be so slow that it wouldn't work, right? So what I'm going to do here is go to my endpoint here. So I got to the 90 frame mark, right? 3 seconds. And I'm going to make sure that it's just this work area that's covered here by this. So just make sure your work area goes from start to the end, which is 3 seconds. And I'm going to go up to Composition, Add to Render Queue. So this is new. So Add to Render Queue will allow me some settings that I can export this at that are ideal to re-import it back into After Effects. Let me show you what I mean. So Add to Render Queue. Now, here's what you're going to change. Where it says lossless, you're going to click on the blue text. Now I'm going to change this to a PNG sequence, right? So that's a sequence of still images that I'm going to re-import back into After Effects. So that's in this little menu here. It won't be a video, it'll just be a bunch of stills, which are much smaller file sizes and much easier for our processors to actually work through. And then in the video output channels, I'm going to hit RGB plus alpha. That gives you that background, that the alpha background, which is the transparent background. Everything else looks good. Press OK. And now I'm going to go to Output to, click on that blue text. So make sure it's going into the right folder. Now, I've got it here. It's going to, by default, going to number them. So there'll be 90 frames coming out, right? 90 little still images. So it's going to be 1 to 90. And I'm going to make sure it's saved in a subfolder is clicked. That'll actually put it in one folder. So it's not just spraying still images all over my project folder. So save in subfolder should be clicked. PNG is fine. And I press save. And so now all I have to do, and it'll be quite quick, is just press render over here. And you can see my blue progress bar rendering out my 90 frames. So you will get that little sound when it's all said and done. So let's go back to the project window, and I will just import, so Command I, or go to File, Import, Import File. And I'm going to go and select in my folder here. You can see I've got 0 to 90, right? So I'm going to select all of these. And I'm going to make sure of one thing here. I'm going to make sure that Create Composition is unclicked, but that PNG sequence is clicked. Super important. PNG sequence, right? Because you don't want just all of these to come in as separate files and then you have to like arrange them, right? This will create a 0 to 90 sequence, which is just something you can drop in. So that's super important. Press open. And there it is, right? So if I go back to my 3D text here and I drop this in, you can see, I'll take the viewer off this one. You can see how much quicker it is to go through this now. I just press spacebar. It just processes so much easier. So once you have your 3D done, it now is a matter of just creating that sequence. Now, the one thing is you can't go back and forth using this strip. It's only this one, this layer here, that has the direct link to your Cinema 4D file, right? This one is now just an external exported version of what you did. So I'm going to click off that again. Now, one thing we can do here is actually extend this so it's a loop. So I can actually take this and just delete it off of my composition. It's still in the project, so I can always come back to it if I want. But with this one, I want to actually make a loop out of this. So let's control-click or right-click on it in the project window. And I'm going to go to Interpret Footage. So this is a cool little step. And go to Main. And I'm just going to loop this, right? So 3 seconds times 15 seconds is 5 loop times, right? So if you think about it, over 15 seconds, it'll loop 5 times. So I can extend this loop. Suddenly now, I can take this end here and bring it all the way to the end of my composition. So now if I go here, suddenly I've got a PNG sequence that loops multiple times. So we did a lot this demonstration. We were able to design a text strip, model it, create an extrude, add a material to it, and a camera move, export it back into After Effects, right? And then create a PNG sequence that we then looped. So a lot happened, but you got your feet wet in 3D. Congratulations. All right, to export this, I'm going to go to File, Export, Add to Media Encoder Queue.